So I drive a custom Super Mario Kart car, and I often try to make things into my shifter knob. I got plenty of custom shifters, and I thought to myself, I want to do a controller for a shifter, and which one would make the best shifter knob, and that's going to have to be the N64 controller. Now this was certainly awkward to hold. How do you hold this controller? It's got the 3 tridents there, and I think that's perfect where we can hollow out part of this, making it the shifter. Maybe you grab it on the end like this and you can shift it. I don't know, I think it'd be a fun project, guys. That's what we're getting into today. All right, first things first, we got to take it apart. Of course, the joystick right there has a lot of wiggle room on that. I think I'm going to have to open it up and glue all the buttons in there, because I'm probably going to have to take the circuit board, most of it out, so I can leave some room for the shifter to go into. Let's see, let's open it up. All right, here's our classic N64 controller and my handy dandy screwdriver set. There's a lot of screws to tackle to get out of here, so we're gonna get at it. Most of these screws here are easy to get. These ones are a pain because they're so far deep down into that little expansion port there. Had to get an extension, but once we got it opened up, we can see what we're working with inside. So I'm kind of gauging what I need to remove. That's obviously going to be in the way, so I need to remove it. But I would like to save the thumbstick so it still looks like a functioning controller. So I'm going to have to open this piece up and take out that thumbstick. All right, don't need any springs or any of the other parts, and we'll just pull out that little thumbstick right there. And I'm just gonna cut the cables on this just to make it a little bit easier.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No!
Kind of looking at it, seeing if the board's gonna move or anything. And I'm getting in here with my flush cut little pliers, and I'm gonna cut out all these tabs here just to make room for where the shifter shaft has to go. I'm breaking out the Dremel. Wouldn't be a DIY if we didn't have the Dremel on here. Got my little sander disc on here. Now I did put this on, but switched to a different tip right here to get in and kind of slowly widen the hole so it would fit over the shifter in the car. And I did a little bit of test fitting back and forth. We're headed to the car right now, see if everything fits. And I do have my Babam shifter right here. This is a older DIY that I did. Love this one, so shiny and looks great. Let's test fit the new one. So I'm using a lug nut for a wheel, and this screws on right away, and it does have a top, so it's gonna stop eventually. And I'm gonna mark the center there with a magic marker. This way I know what the center point is. Usually that's what I do for the other shifters, but with this one, we're gonna work on it in the car there. So I'm test fitting it to see if it closes, if I need to trim out anything else. All right, we're doing this in the car just because it's a little bit easier so I can line everything up. So I brought my epoxy sculpt here. It's a 2-part epoxy, 2 different ones. When you combine them, it roughly dries in about 24 hours to a hard surface there. So we're gonna fill up the N64 controller on the inside here, and then kind of press fit it together so it forms around that lug nut there. This way, when I unscrew it, everything lines up nice and sturdy like that. So let's get to that. Let's get our gloves on so it doesn't get too messy in here. Perfect. All right, we got our gloves on and we're getting into our epoxy sculpt. 2-part epoxy, love this stuff. You take 50-50 mixture, and then when you mix them together, it's gonna harden. So I got a big hefty ball right there, mixing well, kind of rubbing it between my palms, getting a good mix, and then I'm placing it onto that lug nut right there. Make sure to cover the entire lug nut. And now what I wanna do is make sure it's all covered and just smush that N64 controller right on. So it's gonna have contact to the epoxy sculpt, and then I gotta maintain that pressure so when the epoxy sculpt hardens, it's still gonna hold on to that lug nut and not move when I go to unscrew it. So making sure everything lines up, and I brought a couple rubber bands with me just to maintain that pressure because I can't get in there and screw in the back yet. And then once that was done, I used a little bit of blue painter's tape just to hold that bottom piece there. That's where I need the most pressure, and went back with a rubber band as well. Now we're gonna let this cure for 24 hours.
The following day.
All right, it's been about 24 hours. See if we can unscrew this safely and finish it up. All right, brought it back up into the shop. We're taking all the rubber bands off and seeing how it all held together. And now is the time to put the screws back in. So we're putting all the screws, the post that I didn't cut off in the middle there are no screws to put in because I cut the post. That's what the epoxy sculpt is for. So I'm just gonna clean up some of the epoxy sculpt that kind of squeezed out, and I do need to trim that little thumbstick because where it inserts to, that's where the lug nut is. So I just need a little bit of this epoxy sculpt. Now I'm just gonna plop right in there and push the thumbstick in, and we're gonna let that harden overnight as well. I wasn't know if that was gonna be secure enough, so I rolled a couple little pieces and used a little tool to kind of push down in there to make sure the thumbstick wasn't gonna pop out. So that's pretty much it. Once this is dry, we're ready to test drive it out. Use it like that, right from the top. They put an expansion pack in here. That's going to be easier than actually gripping it here, but it works either way. Throw it into neutral. It's a little bit jiggly with the buttons in there. You get that loose button sound, but holding it like this to shift, I feel like it needs to be higher up. All right, well, that was it. The DIY making the N64 controller into a shift knob worked out pretty good. It was a pretty simple process, so I could probably do this with other game controllers as well, more on the bigger side. Probably the Wii controller will work really well because it has that shifter knob already designed to it. This one was a little bit awkward. It seemed better to shift it holding it at the top right here rather than anticipating like this. I suppose if it was a longer pole that we added, kind of like a rat rod shifter thing, it probably would have worked out a little bit better with that, but nonetheless a fun DIY project. So if you guys are curious on the other shifter knobs I did a banana, a Ba-Bomb, Funko Pop Mega Man head. There's a few on the channel. I made a playlist, or you can check out the videos at the end of this. So feel free to click on one of those and subscribe if you're not already, guys. I got new DIY videos coming out all the time. And as always, I'm RussLyman. Keep your world fun bit by bit. I'll see you next video.